Hello everyone, this is Aaditya Mehta and you are listening to podcast on personality development. Today's episode is about mental healing, something which we are never taught about even in our family or in our schools as well. And to guide us with mental healing, because I'm not going to talk much about mental healing because I'm new to the topic as well. So to guide us with that, we have a special expert in today's episode. She is a psychotherapist and the author of the book America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for the nation in crisis. She has developed some amazing and unique techniques that actually says that spiritual and psychological development can go hand to hand together. Interesting, right? So I'm going to have her on the show. Till the time, what you guys can do is you can click on that subscribe button and listen to this intro music while I bring her on this podcast. Here we go. Hey Phyllis, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
The pleasure is all mine, okay? And the pleasure is all, who are listening to you. It is just a pleasure listening to you. And you have achieved a lot in the area of psychological and spiritual development that when I posted about you on the community, people were very eager to listen to you. And unfortunately, we have taken some time to get together and record an episode as
Right.
well.
Right.
It constantly went on, and finally, we are here today recording this episode. I'm genuinely feeling very fortunate to have you on the show, and of course, you have a lot of description for yourself. So all I'm going to ask you is if initially you can start with your detailed introduction. I gave a very short and crisp introduction, but audiences love the detailed description which is given by the expert.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would just want to share with you is that I think anybody who has something of value to share that they really want to contribute to the world as a whole has been through some journey themselves. That we didn't just learn whatever we have out of a book, but we've learned it in the nitty gritty of life experience as well as whatever we've learned, on the more intellectual or academic side. And my life is really like that. I grew up in what appeared to be a fairly normal family, but in fact there was some significant trauma in my childhood that I did not remember. I had buried it all, which is very common for people. When something is overwhelming and scary and hurtful, our little brains as children often don't know how to process that at all. And so we repress it in order to just go on, get up, tie our shoes, go to school, and try to cope with life the best we can. And at some point in my life, I began to it really began to have memories of feeling, a lot of feeling memories more than actual visual memories, that were very distressing. And I was having a hard time in my life, period, which, I think that's what brings a lot of people to therapy is things just aren't working. I'm not making good relationships. I feel like there's something so beautiful and loving inside of me, but I can't get it out. I can't express it in the world, or I'm not being met at the level that I really want to function in life, or I'm creative, but there's a block and I can't express my creativity. So for me, I started writing at a very young age, and that was the one outlet I had to really connecting with myself. I could do it alone. It didn't involve other people. And so I wrote a lot of poetry when I was younger, and that was the way I began to connect. And at some point, I actually realized that writing, and it's different for different people. This is what was true for me. For some people, it's music or art or loving animals or being in nature or whatever it is for a given person. It could be their interest in science or math or medicine. It could be whatever calls us from our essential being is a way to connect with our essential being. And I realized that writing was that for me. Um, and at a certain point in my life, I was in a very dysfunctional marriage. I had 3 little children, and I kind of hit the bottom of, like, I don't know where to turn. I'm really depressed. I don't know how to function. And I went to therapy. And I began to remember the traumas that happened to me in my childhood. And in remembering, I began to heal because I was no longer a mystery to myself. I understood that the pain I felt and some of the ways that I felt really blocked in my life were not signs that I was flawed or that anything was wrong with me. They were signs that something hurtful had happened to me that I was doing my best to cope with. And I think that's true for many people. And we cope in different ways. You know, I coped by turning inward and being a really good student and being a good girl. Some people cope by being angry and lashing out, or becoming addicted, or becoming people pleasers, or becoming workaholics, or having, obsessive thoughts that they're trying to manage. Turn off the stove 20 times to feel safe, whatever it is. We all have our way of doing that. And when I went to therapy, I uncovered enough of what had happened to me to make sense of myself and to release some of that pressure from inside that I was holding down so tightly in order to survive. And as a result, I would say for me, and then I really want you to jump in here, what happened for me is my connection to my own essential self and spirit deepened profoundly, as well as that my creativity began to flower, my relationships began to heal, and in my case, I was able to leave a very dysfunctional marriage because that was the best, healthiest option for me. For some people, they can heal the relationship. For me, that wasn't a possibility. And I went on to have a very profound spiritual connection. And that kind of merged with my psychological understanding. And I became a psychotherapist. And the first 2 books that I wrote, A Light in the Darkness and Into the Fire, are all about the beginning of that spiritual journey that came out of psychological and emotional healing. And then this latest book is really trying to bring that psychological healing. For me, it's to America because that's where I live. But the things that I'm talking about apply to any country, anywhere. Because we're human beings. We operate on the same basic psychological principles no matter where we live,
Right.
for better or for worse. So,
Mm.
and so my creativity flowered. I was able to remarry into a healthy relationship, and my life completely changed. Is it perfect? No. Do I still have problem issues that come up? Do I still have conflicts that I have to resolve? Do I always feel great? No, but I have more and more tools and skills to navigate in a healthy way rather than a dysfunctional way.
Right. That's very well said. And I really appreciate you sharing those detailed story. Uh, because, you know, it's sometimes that we also feel that we are in a relationship where it's not working out. We are,
Right,
you know, and we have faced traumas, okay? But somewhere we bury it under, somewhere in our mind or heart that we don't want to, pull it out. And when that layer comes out, it's really difficult to handle that without a therapist. Okay.
right,
So there are a lot of things which really needs to be addressed to become a better person in yourself, right? And I really appreciate you sharing all those things. However, one thing which I would, like over here to ask, because I know this is more about mental healing, uh, but one thing which I would like to ask is the differentiation between the millennials and the Gen Zs, which are coming nowadays. Okay. Because millennials, I would say the 90s kids or even, 85 kids, okay, when they grew up, these were there was not much awareness about mental wellness or mental health awareness. There wasn't much about it, and so all the people actually buried everything deep inside, and they have not shared a lot of things. And now, when the Gen Z, who has access to the latest news, they have latest awareness about mental health and mental well-being. Okay, it's moreover like they are, whenever a smaller thing appears, they feel that they are depressed. Ideally they are not, or maybe they are. Okay, it's a completely two different scenarios over here. But the point is, from being into the era where there was no mental health awareness, to the era where even a tiniest thing turns out that it needs to be consulted with the therapy. How this change has occurred, and how do you think that in the world of Gen Z's, okay, how Gen Z's are going to deal with it? Is it good to depend a lot on therapists? I know you are a therapist, and but I genuinely had that question. Do you feel that for even smaller things we need to get be dependent on therapists, or sometimes it's okay to fight it in our own way? What do you think about it?
Well, I think it's all in everything. It's both and, because I think there is no one answer to every issue that human beings have at all. And one of the reasons why I wrote the book America in Therapy is because, over years and years of working with individuals and couples and families and children, um, and in the world of psychology today, we look at family systems. We know that people are not islands. You don't just get born a murderer or someone who's exploitive and is going to rob a bank, or you don't get born someone who's going to commit incest. We're all born very pure, essential little infants. And then something happens to us in our conditioning, from the people around us, from the values around us, from the communities around us, from gender expectations, from economic, privilege or deprivation, from the politics we grow up in. We are conditioned by all these things to have certain beliefs about ourselves, about what's appropriate behavior, about what are the rewards and consequences for different behaviors, what's expected of us, and in particular, how we're supposed to deal with conflict, which is really the big one. Because we, as human beings, we're all unique and individual, and we have different ideas, we have different nature, we have different nurture, and we're never going to agree on everything, nor is that necessarily the goal. The goal is that we know how to work out our differences in peace and love and cooperation, for our own benefit, for the benefit of our children, and for the benefit of the people in the world around us. So I'm looking at the microcosm of the individual and the macrocosm of the largest family systems that we all live in, which are not just our individual family, but our communities, our governments, our churches, our places of education, our businesses, all of it. So going back to your original question, I grew up in a time where no one talked about psychology. No one
Right.
talked about internal dynamics, family dynamics, cultural dynamics. No one talked about wounding. We just all had these expectations that we were supposed to succeed. And succeeding meant you had a husband or a wife and two children and a white picket fence, and you made a good income, and you had a respected career. That was
Right.
success, you know.
Right.
And the world has changed so dramatically, so dramatically. The first time I went to therapy, and for years, I never considered going to therapy because it felt shameful. It felt like an admission that you were a flawed human being and that you couldn't get it together yourself. And
Mm.
in the best of all worlds, today we know that that's not true. We know that when people are hurt by other people, they need help from other people. We don't all get it. The answer is not always in therapy, but therapy is a wonderful tool for those who have access to it and can afford it, or depend on what your resources are. Um,
Right.
it's a wonderful tool to really go down into the wounds that you suffered, that you need to heal. Because let me just say, so if for the Gen Zs, if that's more of an accepted modality for healing, great if you have access to it. And I
Mm,
can't say that enough because we really, really need help from other people, and it's not shameful. No one is ashamed to go to the computer technician to fix their computer when they can't fix
mm,
it themselves. No
mm,
one's ashamed to go to the car mechanic when their engine fails. But somehow we have shame about asking for help for our emotional and mental needs and well-being. And that's
mm.
really very, very tragic. And
Right.
and I think that's slowly changing. But the other big thing I want to say, and I have a whole book, so sometimes my mind races way ahead of me. But the other big thing I want to say is that our conditioning now comes from the entire world with access to social media in particular and our world involvement
Mm,
and the consequences of one nation's actions on the entire world around them that is either represented accurately or misrepresented in the news media and social media. We are all inundated every day with the mass
mm,
of dysfunction and hurtful things that are going on in the world, and less so, I think, which is also tragic, with the good things that are going on in the world, because there are amazing people doing incredible things in the world today that are wonderful role models that we could all learn from and be inspired by. But with the inundation of social media and so much dissemination of discrimination and injustice, and who do we going to have a war with next, and our collective inability to even see navigating conflict peacefully as a goal, I think it has caused a lot of depression and hopelessness in a lot of young people. And so the healing has to take place both on an individual family level and on a collective level at the same time. And
mm.
so that's really why I wrote my book, because I feel like we need to look at the relationship between the microcosm of the individual and the individual family and the macrocosm of our larger communities and governments and the whole global culture that we are being bombarded with.
Right. That's very well said. The reason why I asked this question was very simple. That it's okay, okay, to go to the therapist because we have that tool. And I think a wonderful analogy that you give about going to a computer technician, okay, that was a
Mhm.
really great analogy, and I love it. And so audience, it's fine to go to a therapist. I go to one, so I can completely say that it's fine to go to a therapist and talk about things, okay, and I'm sure it's gonna help you a lot, okay. But like when you go to a gym, it is going to
Right.
make your muscle pain. It is going to give you little more hardships than the regular ones, but in the long term it is going to make your body fit, right?
Right.
So in the initial phase, when you go to a therapist, you are going to experience certain things, but that is just for a short period of time, right? And later on, it's all for your own good. So yeah, please go to the therapist, and I cannot emphasize enough on that. However, coming back to you, Phyllis, um, so about mental healing, you see that most of the times, okay, people who don't go to the therapy because let's say there are financial issues that people face as well, okay, it's really tough to go to a therapist, okay, and especially have that kind of money to spend, like I don't know what's the price in America, but over here it's like 1500, 2000 rupees per session, okay.
Mhm.
So most of
Mhm.
the people don't see it as an investment for their own
Mhm.
well-being, and most of them they don't have it as well, okay.
Right.
So it's really difficult to go to a therapist in India, especially, okay. Might be
Mhm.
in United
Mhm.
States, I don't know whether it's easy to access them or not. I don't have any idea about it. But you see that there is always a problem with financial part as well.
Right.
And especially the older generation, older than Gen Z's, I would say, like they they don't even feel like going to a therapist. They feel that they are strong enough to deal with the problems which they have, and they try to solve it by hook or by crook by themselves only. Okay.
Mhm.
So, and that could be anything. Okay. So, let's say someone has lost a friend. Okay. Someone might have, gone through a childhood trauma. Someone might have, lost a job. Okay. Someone might have been emotionally or physically abused. Okay. Or sexually abused. So all these things come together, and sometimes a human being is not sure on, how to heal themselves.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
feel that they have healed themselves, okay, most of the times, because they are like, okay, I just need 1 week and then I'll be back in my form, and all these things happens. But ultimately it's the other way around. They have actually buried that trauma deep inside them, and they are just going with the flow. So what would you like to say to those people?
Well, to people who don't have access to just going to a therapist and really diving in, what I would say is, and that's true for many, many people, of course. There's so many resources besides therapy. I mean, I do think therapy is amazing if it's good. If you have a good therapist with good skills and a good understanding of individual and family dynamics, it's an invaluable resource. But there are many, many books that you can read, that you can get out of the library or access online, on both on healing principles and healing techniques, on individual people's stories that can be inspiring about how they overcame some of the difficulties or traumas in their own life and what they resourced. And often for people with stories like that, they had one person who supported them. It doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be someone who believes in you, someone who sees you for your essential worth and beauty, someone who cares for you, someone who offers you an opportunity to, attend a school or take a class or learn, to play your instrument or whatever it is. So really seeking out people who are supportive is a very helpful tool. And again, educating yourself. There's so much out there. That's one of the beauties of social media and of the internet and technology today, is that we have access to so much information and so many people's personal stories. And the other thing I would say is, because this is one of the things that I see happens for people, and certainly happened for me in my own healing journey, is I came to really trust what I loved. I love nature. I love children. I love people. I love writing. I love learning. And at one point I did a lot of painting. I don't do so much of it right now because I'm so invested in writing, but it was a great source of joy and healing for me. So if you just follow what your deepest connection to your intuitive and essential self is directing you to, that can also be profoundly healing.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be that you make millions of dollars at it. It could be that you paint in your free time, or you just take long walks in nature because you feel connected to the earth. Another incredible tool for many people, not for all people, but was a tool for me, and I know it's a tool for many, is journal writing. So having a place where you can just share all your deepest thoughts and feelings that you may not want to share with another person, in privacy and in safety with yourself. Because there's nothing like opening up that deep communication with oneself to begin the healing process. And for me, actually, I will tell you that it was at this very difficult time in my life that I mentioned before, that I was writing in my journal, when I discovered through writing in my journal that there was something I needed to remember. And it just came out of me as I was writing in my journal, because I opened up that space of deep connection to myself. And the other last thing I would say is, one of the beauties of the best psychotherapy is that you're totally safe to be vulnerable. you're totally safe to cry or feel your pain or admit the places in your life where you feel like you weren't your best self, and maybe you hurt other people the way you were hurt yourself. Because most of us, don't have a perfect track record. We've been hurt, we hurt others. It may not be intentional. It may be very, that we have great remorse for, I said this to you, or, I acted out here, or I didn't call you when, when your parent died, or whatever it was, that we've all done stuff. And the safety in being vulnerable to reveal it all is one of the best gifts of psychotherapy. And you can sometimes have that with a friend or a partner. It doesn't have to be with a therapist. So to seek out people that are comfortable being vulnerable and who actually value vulnerability so that you can, or be that person yourself for others. These are all different ways to access healing energy.
That's very well said, and I really appreciate you doing that because audience, it's not important, right? You just need to find people, and journaling is a practice personally that I do. Okay,
Mm,
and every night I have been journaling. I will take out 15 minutes of my time from my busy schedule and I'll make sure that I write. Okay, and that is something which has really helped me as well. Okay,
yes,
so I think you guys can do it. Okay, I mean, it's not gonna cost you for trying it out for a week.
right,
I mean,
right.
but it might help you in some or the other way. So why don't you try it? And if you are going to try that, do let me know on Instagram, and
Mm,
I'll convey your message to Phyllis as well, that because
oh,
of this
great.
episode someone has started writing a journal. Okay,
Okay.
so
And,
make sure to
and
do that. Yeah.
And let me just add here, there's a very beautiful journaling technique. There's two, actually, that I want to share with your audience. One is, and I learned this as a therapist, I've done it myself. I've had clients do it with great revelation of insight. And that journaling practice is to write with your opposite hand. So if you're right-handed, you write with your left hand. If you're left-handed, you write with your right hand. And the theory behind that is that when you write with your non-dominant hand, you have more access to your unconscious. And so if you ask a question in your journal, specifically a lot of the exercises that I've done with clients and did myself is you asking your inner child, what happened that made me feel so anxious? What happened that made me feel so uncomfortable in my body? What happened that I want to drink more than I know is good for me? And then you write the answer with your non-dominant hand. And I can tell you the things that people have, you have to do it slower, right? Because we don't write well with our non-dominant hand.
Yeah.
So it slows down the process. It taps into your unconscious, and inevitably people will come up with a memory they didn't remember or an association with something that was not in their conscious mind now, and they learn things about themselves. That's an amazing technique. It's also great to do it if you have someone you can share it with. This is what I learned. I can't overestimate the value of sharing with other people who are safe. The other technique is, and this was the beginning actually of profound spiritual connection for me, was you write a question like, why do I have so much anxiety? Or why do I feel so blocked in my creativity? Or I know I have a lot of love inside of me, but it's not coming out in a way that really feels enriching and sustainable for me. And then you listen inside as if your highest self, your most essential self, your soul, God, whatever you call it, because different people call it different things, is answering you. And you just listen. What would Spirit say to me now in answer to this question? And the best way to do that writing technique is to write down whatever you hear without editing it. Don't let your conscious mind in. Just write down what you hear, and it can start a flow of really tapping into your deepest wisdom. And for me, whatever route you take, whether it's psychotherapy and you go to a therapist, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's following a spiritual practice, maybe it's just being in the church of nature under the trees, but whatever you're called to follow in terms of healing on that level, and it could be this writing practice, we all have, and I totally believe this, we all have the wisdom and the guidance we need within us. And so whether you go to a therapist or you go to a spiritual master or you do some other practice, for me, the best gift of that is that you eventually get in touch with your own inner wisdom and guidance.
That's such a great technique. I mean, this is something which is new for me as well, and I'm definitely going to try these two techniques for sure. One, writing with your non-dominant hand, and the second one is asking a question. I believe these two are amazing techniques, and I'm going to try that myself for sure.
Great,
And
great.
I'm going to tell you, Phyllis, once I do that, what am I
Yay,
feeling. Okay,
yay.
and I'm going to take some of the free session of yours as well, because I just
Right.
started it, right? So I'm definitely doing that. And audience, all I would say is trying is easy. Okay, so make sure to try it out. I'm sure it's gonna take you places, so make sure to try it out as well. I mean, I'm pretty excited to try it out today after recording this episode. uh,
Great,
uh, Phyllis,
great.
one more thing which I would like to ask over here. You mentioned more and more about writing journals and different techniques which is other than um, writing journals and going through the therapist. So finding that one soul, and sometimes you become one soul as well to listen to other another people. Okay,
Right.
and recently, when I'm being friends with some people, I am being a good listener. Okay, so there are always people who shares a lot of things with me,
Mhm.
and I did found out, and I feel personally it has somewhere happened with me as well, that when you are in a relationship, okay, and in a relationship, a romantic relationship, I would specify that when you are in a romantic relationship, um, and you come to know that what, this relationship it isn't working out. Okay, and the other person has given strict instructions that please do not call me, please do not be with me, please don't try to connect with me, and all these things. This is being faced by one of my friend. Okay, I would not take her name, but that's the
Mhm.
thing which has happened to her. Now what happened over here is, she told me that it is really difficult for me to not talk to him. Okay, like, I am just ready to bury my self respect deep inside the earth, that I just want to talk to him. I just want to listen to him. I just want, to spend more time with him. And now that's not there, but still I want to do it. Okay. And it is difficult for people, most of the people. And personally, it was difficult for me as well, back in my time. So what would you suggest over here, how people can actually do their mental healing, and how much of a strength and efforts are required to heal that part of the life?
Yeah. So you're saying that your friend wants to keep talking to the person who doesn't want to talk to her. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think one of the focuses of good therapy or good healing, let's just say, is I'm going to give it these words. It's called distress tolerance. We have to learn how to tolerate our own distress. And you see that a lot with children, right? Children, they get angry, they have a temper tantrum, they can't tolerate that they didn't get what they want, or they can't stay up later, or they can't eat ice cream before dinner or whatever, and they have a big meltdown, right? And
Right.
for a good parent, they help their child learn to tolerate their own distress by, it doesn't mean the child can't cry, but they can't throw things, for instance. So maybe they're crying because they're upset, but they're not allowed to throw things or hit people. And and that translates to our adult behavior. I want to call him. I want to talk to him. I don't want to lose the relationship, but he said no. He said no. He made a boundary. He does not want me to approach him or contact him. And as an adult, I need to respect that boundary and learn to tolerate my own distress. Does that mean I won't have distress? No, I have distress. I miss him. I long for him. I wish he loved me, or I wish we'd get back together, or I wish I could just tell him this, or tell him that, or the thing I didn't get to say, or whatever it is. Um, but he said no. He made an appropriate boundary for himself. And I have to tolerate my own distress. So how do I do that? Maybe I share all my pain with somebody else, a good friend. I can just, let it all out and cry and say I miss him, or I wish he still loved me, or whatever it is. Or maybe I go for a long run and I get it out of my body, or I journal about it, like we were just talking.
Right.
Or I go to therapy and I really explore, what is it in me? What part of it is it in me that can't take a no? Am I the
Right.
child having the tantrum? And not that I'm bad or wrong because I feel that way, but how can I deal with that in a healthy way? Just like you want your child to deal with it in a healthy way. They might cry and, say, stomp off to their room, but like I said, you're not going to let them smash furniture or hit the dog or break a window. And that's what we have to learn to do ourselves.
Right. Well, very well said. I really appreciate that. I know this has been a question answer round, and normally it is not like this. But, I mean, currently I am getting some amazing wisdom from you. And so I'm going to continue the format of question and answers over here, because I'm really loving the answers that you are giving, the solutions that you are giving. And one thing you mentioned about the other person creating that boundary, to, and for us to respect that is really really important, because sometimes even we create boundaries and we do expect other person to respect that.
That's
Okay.
right.
And that is something which is really really amazing. And uh, this is something which definitely helps a lot of people to understand that sometimes yes you are in distress, but there is writing that can help you, journaling can help you, and talking to a friend helps you. Okay, so all these things are quite important. Make sure to do that, guys, especially men. Please do that. Okay.
Mm,
uh
mm,
I
mm-hmm.
know it sounds really really typical of me, because I talk a lot about men, because it's not that I hate women. Okay, it's just that women do that on regular basis, we
Right,
don't. Okay,
right. That's so
so
true.
it's not going to affect your macho personality if you are trying in front of a friend. Okay, and it's completely fine to actually let it all out. So, and if you need any help, please make sure to connect with me. I can help you with a thing on two. For just being a listener, I can be there for you as well. And now we have amazing Phyllis Levitt with us as well. So you can Instagram, you can DM her on Instagram or on LinkedIn. And I'm sure
Hmm.
if you mention to her that you have listened to her on Personality Development Podcast, she will reply to you. I'm sure
I
about it.
will.
Right,
I will
Phyllis?
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. So, Benz, please do that. One more question, Phyllis, I would really love to ask. most of the men's today, and this is related to men's also, that most of the men's feel that crying is a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And in the process they do not cry. Okay. And somewhere, because they haven't cried, they haven't processed their emotions, they sort of become this toxic men who tries to dominate women sometimes.
Right. Right.
It's not in their nature, but it's some unprocessed emotions that just comes out naturally, and they don't even know about what's happening to them. Okay. So for
Yeah.
all the men who feels that crying is a sign of weakness and sharing is a sign of weakness, any message that you would like to give to them?
Well, that could be, that could be a long talk, but I will absolutely say that it's a tragedy that our culture has evolved in the way that the male energy of assertion and activity and producing results is so far divided from the feminine qualities of receptivity and vulnerability and sharing and and being emotional and feeling good about feeling emotional. It's really a tragedy, and I think it hurts all of us. It hurts men and women alike,
Right.
because when you're hurt, and most of us have been hurt in some way, and some people really, traumatized, beaten as children, or molested, or ostracized, or bullied at school, or hated for the color of their skin or their religion. Many people are severely traumatized in our culture. And so, speaking to men now, if the expectation is that you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and you don't show any vulnerability, and that looks like an admission of weakness, or you're going to become then a target of more hurt, which often is the case. When you're a child, if you show vulnerability, it can be a survival mechanism not to show that. Then what happens is you've repressed the pain, and it's going to come out somewhere else.
Hmm.
We have a volcano inside of us. It's going to erupt. And for men, unfortunately, more than women, and it's not black and white, it's always men or always women, but
Yeah.
speaking to what you're saying as a general issue, for men, it most often comes out as rage, because rage doesn't feel vulnerable. And then you're dominating, you're hurting other people the way you were hurt in some way, and the cycle continues. And so, what I always say, and we know this as psychotherapists, but it's not general knowledge, is that it takes actually enormous strength. It takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to cry and feel the pain that you've repressed and that that has come out sideways as rage, as addiction, as, trying to become wealthy at the expense of everybody else. Whatever way that it comes out in some image that you consider acceptable for a man, most likely the pain doesn't go away, and it keeps generating the same symptoms of aggression. It's usually aggression in some way. Sometimes it's sexual aggression, sometimes it's business aggression, sometimes it's just you have to be right and everybody else is wrong and nobody can argue with you. But I just want to share this. There's a beautiful documentary that I saw several years ago, and I'm not sure if I remember the exact title, but it was something like The Masks We Live In or something like that. And in the documentary, there were many interviews of men in prison, men who had committed horrible crimes, murder and rape and, assault and all kinds of things. And in the interview with these men, invariably, they had massive trauma that they had never been able to heal. They saw their mother killed by their father beat their mother beat the other kids or beat them, somebody molested them when they were little and nobody believed them and they kept being exposed to the molester. horrible, tragic things that filled them with rage that they had nowhere else to express. And it came out in these very destructive acts. And in these interviews with these men, you could see the vulnerable, beautiful person inside them that was just hurting and had no help and no way to release and feel safe with their vulnerability and their pain and no opportunity to heal. Because I can tell you this, from all the years that I've been a therapist, working with hundreds of people, when people have a chance to heal, really heal the hurt that they've sustained, no matter how great it is, they stop being, abusive and violent themselves. We become more loving, we become more compassionate, we become more cooperative, and we become more a member of society in a constructive way. And that doesn't mean we do it perfectly, but we have tools to keep reaccessing and re-upping that.
Right. That's very well said. That's really very well said. And to all the parents out there, and to all the friends out there, if your friend is going for a therapy, if your friend or maybe your son or a daughter is going for a therapy, if your friend is crying in front of you, that doesn't mean that he is weak.
Mm-mm.
It's your time to help him out, and
Right?
just be there to hear him. Just be there to listen to them, and do not, it's not important to offer any advice. It's just to, hear them out. And that's sometimes it's all needed. That's
That's
all it
right.
is needed. So be there for them instead of just making fun out of it. So,
Right.
you know
And also to say, like, it's so beautiful that you could express your pain and cry. How wonderful it is. I'm so honored that you could do that with me. That's a message. And one quick little message, and I don't know if it's like this in India, but it's certainly like this in America, is that often people will unconsciously say to little boys who are crying, oh, don't be a girl. Don't
yeah.
act like a girl. And that's the most horrible thing to say because it just cements that if you cry, you're not a boy, you're not a man.
Yes, yes, that's true in India as well. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
like, uh, it is very commonly said कि अरे लड़कियां रोती है लड़के नहीं रोते. It typically means that only girls can cry, boys don't cry. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of statements that are used in India as well to little kids. So it's certainly the same in India and America, I would say. And that needs to be stopped. Okay, so yeah, that's very well said, and it was a very important message. Now coming to the community questions, Phyllis. So I have already mentioned to you that we have a small community on WhatsApp where I say people about the experts that are going to come on the show, and if they have any questions they can ask that to me, and I'll be the one to ask those questions on behalf of them.
Sure.
Okay, so normally we take one community questions, but today it is a very special episode related to mental healing, so I'm going to take two community questions over here.
Okay.
So there is one guy from the community. I'm not going to mention his name on this podcast because it's valuing their privacy, and
Mm-hmm.
but he has asked this question that in my family, my parents are always fighting with each other, and I am the one who always solves the problem, gets in between the fight, and tries to solve the problem. And it has become so worse that I feel that my mom is not safe in that house. I
Wow.
live differently, in a different city, and I have always asked my mom that I want to bring her at my place, and she says that I am never going to leave your father. I will stay over here itself. And currently all I'm feeling is that my mother is choosing my father rather than staying with me. and she doesn't love me. And what should I do? What should I do next? Okay. So let me give you a little background over here, Phyllis. In in India, most of the times, especially those marriages that has happened 20, 30, 40 years back, the housewives over here, they deal with their husbands, no matter how they are, okay, how toxic they are or how abusive they are, physically or mentally or by words as well, but they still like to stay with them. It is known as Pativrata Stri. Okay. So a wife who has dedicated her life to her husband. Okay. Now, no matter how he is, it doesn't matter. Okay. So that's the kind of situation which Indian family has,
Yeah.
and due to which their children suffers. Okay. And I can see this is the similar kind of a case. Okay. So yeah, that's how it is. What would you like
Yeah.
to say about it?
Well, I think that's very difficult because it's a cultural norm to have that kind of relationship. And it seems like not only is it a norm, but maybe it's expected of a wife that she devotes her life to her husband no matter how she's treated. Um, so it may not be possible to actually get his mom to leave. And but here's a couple of things I would say just to your general audience. One is that his mom is so conditioned that that's what's expected of her, that's what she needs to do. Maybe she believes she totally depends on her husband for her well-being, for her livelihood, for her status in the community, whatever it is, that she won't leave no matter what, even if she's being harmed. Um, and that's true in families in other countries and in America as well, not necessarily because it's a cultural norm, but because people have been so conditioned by their own upbringing, by the models of behavior that they've seen as children in their own homes, that that's what they've come to expect. And they haven't found that place inside of them that can say no more. I don't deserve this. I don't want to live this life, and I'm willing to face whatever the consequence is for me of leaving. And for some people, they're just not willing or they're not able to face that consequence. But the couple of things that I would tell your friend is it's not about not loving him. It's about not
Hmm.
loving herself. She doesn't know how to love herself in a way that would make her safe. It's not about not loving him. He's trying to stand up for her. And it's wonderful that he supports her to find safety, to leave something that's abusive, and that he is willing to take care of her or help her out in that process. But the fact that she may or may not ever be able to do that is not a reflection, I don't believe, on her feelings for him. I think she's caught in a cultural paradigm that may be too entrenched. But the good news is, and this is really where the good news is, he does not have to continue the legacy of that kind of male-female relationship in his own life. He can teach his children differently. Is he an adult? He's an adult.
He is an adult. Yeah.
Yeah. He can treat his own wife, if he's married or if he gets married, he can treat his own wife the way that he wishes his father would treat his mother. He can role model for his children a loving, respectful, safe, peace-oriented, conflict-resolving marriage for his children. And that's how ultimately we break this cycle, is we embody something different ourselves. And there's a big expression in the United States. I don't know if you have it here, but it came out of AA, which is Alcoholics Anonymous, which is, we learn to change the things we can, accept the things we can't, and grow the wisdom to know the difference. And he may or may not be able to change what's happening with his mother, but he has the power to change those dynamics in his own life and to speak about them with his peers, and proliferate a different kind of male-female relationship in his own group of people. And that's where his power may lie.
That's very well said. Uh, Firstly, thank you for asking this question. I'm not saying your name, but I feel you. Okay, and
Yeah.
thank you for being brave enough to ask this question. And I'm sure whatever it is, I believe you have got the answer. It's not something which you would have loved to hear, but it is something that you need to hear. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I would say, if even after this, if you would like to get connected with me, please do. I would love to talk to you about it. And yeah, moving on to the next question. Uh,
Can I say one more thing? Can I say one more
yeah,
thing to
yeah,
your
please, please.
person? And that is, you don't have to give up trying to help your mom. You know, what I'm saying is don't, not necessarily that you should be resigned. You can keep advocating for her that she love herself enough to take care of herself, that it causes you suffering to see her be mistreated. You can share. Just, you have to know that she is going to do whatever she's capable of doing, and that it's not your fault if she doesn't protect herself. And it would be sad. And the other quick thing I want to say about that is it's another example of learning distress tolerance. It's very painful to see someone you love be hurt. Very painful. And it's a normal human impulse that you want to protect them and save them and rescue them and help them. And it's because you are a loving, caring human being that you feel this way to your mother, and you're not giving her the message that she should just be devoted to her husband no matter what he does. Um, and at the same time, learning to tolerate your own distress and focus on what you can do.
That's wonderfully said. So yeah, I mean, I really hope that you have got your answer. Um, Going on to the next community question. This is from a girl. Okay, she is an adult. Okay, she is 26 years old, and she says that I have been stuck in an emotional incest with my father and my brother. Okay, they spend a lot of time with me, and they talk about a lot of things which I would not like to hear. Okay,
Mm.
and this is something which affects my relationship with my boyfriend as well. But I don't want to upset my father or my brother, to actually tell them that I don't want to. I don't want you to share these things with me. What should I do over here? Firstly, Phyllis, like to I would like you to explain what emotional incest is, uh, just for the audience, because I
Yeah.
really think most of the people might not know this concept.
Right. Yeah, and it's probably a fairly new concept in the world of psychology. I didn't grow up with any language like that. These are very new concepts that, as we've worked with more and more people and we've delved into the nitty gritty of their relationship experiences and dynamics, that we've come to understand what some of these things are. So emotional incest, if you think of incest as sexual incest, it's an invading somebody else's body against their will and against what's good for them. And emotional incest is the same thing on an emotional level, that you're invading someone's emotional space in a way that doesn't serve them, that's not healthy, and that is forced on them. Um, so it's an invasion of a person's emotional life. Emotional incest could be looking like you're demanding that someone tell you the intimate details of their life that they don't want to share. But more often, it looks like oversharing on the part of the person who's emotionally incestuous. Like they're telling you things you don't really want to know. I had a client whose mother would share the sexual details of her relationship with the woman's father. Um, Totally inappropriate. It could be just, a parent crying on the shoulder of a 10-year-old and expecting that 10-year-old to be the one who provides solace and comfort when they're a child and they really, what they need is for the parent to be taking care of them, not to be taking care of their parent. So these are different forms of emotional incest. It's oversharing, it's demanding something that's emotionally inappropriate for the other person. And there's no rule book on what that looks like. For one person, it could be, I don't mind if my mom tells me she's having a hard time with her coworker. For somebody else, it might be like, please don't bring your problems from work to me. Try to resolve them at work. So a person who feels like there's emotional incest going on, let's just say with your friend, with their father or their brother, the work is to find that place in you that can say, I don't want to hear this. I love you. I care about you. I'm sorry that you're going through that, or I know you need to talk about this, but I'm not the right person. It's too much information for me, or it's upsetting me, or I feel helpless because I can't really do anything about it, or I feel like you're asking too much of me emotionally that is not appropriate for a daughter or a sister to give. I don't know the specifics of what the dynamic is, but I'm trying to give some examples of what it might look like. But it's interesting for me that you said it's a woman and the emotional incest she feels is happening with her father and her brother, who are two males. And so it could also be related to the first question, or what you brought up about, the person feeling like their mother is at risk, but she can't leave her role with her husband. It could be that there's so many cultural expectations of women, even on that emotional level, that she doesn't feel like culturally she has a right to say, no, I really don't want to hear that. And so it could be a really big piece of work to change that gender expectation in her own life. And so, the first thing I would say is find support for really formulating what the emotional boundary is that you feel is healthy for you. And then find support at the same time for how you might express that. It usually goes over better if it's delivered in a loving, respectful way. I love you, Dad. I love you, my brother. I care about what you're feeling, but I am very uncomfortable when you share X, Y, or Z with me, or when you have this expectation that I'm going to be here to handle this emotional feeling or whatever it is. And I really want you to stop. And then, and this is almost always true when a person makes a new boundary, and I'm kind of trying to give you the big picture, there's usually blowback. There's usually a reaction. Many people will not like hearing that, and they'll push back. What's wrong with you? Or this is what you're supposed to do. Or, I told you that because I trusted you. And, whatever they do to make you feel like you're the bad guy, like you're the one who has the problem, or you're the one who needs help, and these are very common reactions. It's unusual to be in the position that your friend is saying that she's in, to say, Dad, please don't tell me any more about blah, blah. It really makes me uncomfortable. I love you. I care about you. Maybe go talk to Uncle so-and-so about it, whatever. It's very unusual for that person to say, you're right. That really is overstepping the bounds of our relationship, and I won't do it anymore. It takes a high level of emotional development to even be able to see that and respond that way. So part of the challenge is to expect that it's not going to go over well. And then where are you going to stand? And where can you get support for holding your stand? So this is really big, what you're talking about. Really, really big.
Wonderful. Uh, well, thank you so much, firstly, to ask this question. I'm really proud of you for being such brave to ask this question, and I really, really appreciate it. But if you need more insight on this, you can get connected to a therapist, and or what you can do is you can get connected to Phyllis about this, and you know, take a deeper insight into it. On that note, Phyllis, this would be my last question, I promise. And
Okay,
that is,
sure.
if people wants to get connected with you, if people wants to find you on the internet, how can they get connected with you?
Yeah, and I would love that. So I have a website. That's the best place to connect with me, or it's one of the best. It's my name. It's www.phyllisleviatt.com, and I think you can see it spelled there. And I have lots of interviews on my website. I have more details about what's in my book. I have blogs. You can contact me through my website. You can buy my book through the website. If you contact me, and let me just say this because I so want to share, what I have learned because it's helped me so much. Um, so if you sign up for my newsletter, I put out a newsletter. I try to put out really good content in my newsletter, not like just fluff. Um, if you sign up for my newsletter, you can get a free PDF. The link is in the newsletter for a free PDF, and it's like a mini course that you can just take in your own life about what I have learned are the best principles of how to resolve conflict in the most positive way that could bring you actually to resolution with another person and maybe reconnection with another person, which I see as the goal of conflict resolution. Because most of us did not grow up with any good role models of what you do when you're in conflict with other people. Most of us learn to either fight and try to impose our will and our way on other people and be right, or exit the relationship, or close the door on the person, or act out on them, and talk about them to other people, whatever we do that's really dysfunctional. And there are really good principles of how to actually heal when there is conflict. And so that's the mini course you can get for free. It's called The 6 Secrets of Resolving I forget what it's called, The 6 Secrets of Resolving Conflict, but it's something else. Anyway, you can get that for free. If you look on the home page of my website, there is a free quiz you can take. You just click on it and you can take it for free, and it helps you identify what's your conflict style. Are you somebody who fights? Are you somebody who exits? Are you somebody who just submits? Are you somebody who's passive aggressive, who acts out sideways when you're in conflict but you won't deal with it directly? Or are you somebody who has learned some mediating skills? And once you take that quiz and identify your own conflict style, you have access to the whole PDF that outlines all of the conflict styles, and you can kind of see where you are, where the people in your life are. And then if you afford yourself of the 6 Secrets PDF, you can start to learn some skills for how to deal with conflict differently in your life. And I just had someone write to me the other day who had broken up with their girlfriend, and I had sent him that PDF on resolving conflict, and they worked on it together, and they're back together because they have new tools for actually dealing with the conflict in their relationship. So I just can't emphasize enough how important it is for us all, whether it's individuals in our family, the people we work with, the people in our community, the people in our government, the people in the world, to learn new skills about coming together, listening to each other with respect, and really trying to resolve our differences instead of going to war.
That's very well said. Thank you so much for saying those things out. So, audience, I'm going to mention each and every link in the description. So, you are just a click away from Phyllis Levitt. So, make sure to get connected with her and make sure to mention to her that you have listened to her on Personality Development Podcast to get her reply on priority basis. Okay, so make sure to do that. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to this entire episode. I know it's a big one, but the topic itself is really, really big. So we need to talk big about it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
uh, thank you so much for listening to this one. And with that being said, this is Aditya Mehta along with Phyllis Levitt signing off from this episode. See you in the next one. Till then, peace